So I always thought it'd be amusing that if in the dictionary, under the definition for recursion, they wrote C, recursion. But they don't seem to have a sense of humour. And one of the other great jokes in mathematics is, what does the B in Benoit B Mandelbrot stand for? It stands for Benoit B Mandelbrot. These things, it can't be coincidence, it's just too funny. Recursion and feedback then, and fractal geometry and all that good stuff, where things feed back into themselves. So I don't want to get too technical, too in-depth, because basically I don't know it. There's like first order recursiveness, which is just like a simple feedback. This is probably more akin to, for every action there is an equal but opposite reaction. And then there's this notion of turbulent systems, and then when it becomes more turbulent, it becomes, what do they call it? It's not streamlined and not non-linear. There's like patterns emerge, and then it goes back to chaotic, and then patterns emerge. And you can see this in a flock of starlings. You know, occasionally they'll fly at different angles, but then they'll come together and flock. And then, although we might not recognise where the flock is going because it's unpredictable, there certainly seems to be a cohesion about it. And if you've ever done Boids simulations, it's easy to simulate a flock. Any member has just 3 simple rules, approximately. First rule is fly towards the centre of mass. The second rule is keep equidistant from the 6 closest neighbours. And the third one is fly at the same speed as the average of your neighbours, or something like that. And if every member in the flock does that, emergent flock movements take hold. So it's probably quite a pertinent metaphor, because for the birds or the boids to know what speed to fly at, they need to be aware of the speed of their nearest neighbours. To know which direction to fly in, they need to be aware of where the centre of mass of all their neighbours are, approximately. So the bird or the boid decides to change path, fly in that direction at this speed. However, that influences their neighbour who's watching them. So the instigator, their decision and their perception about where the centre of mass is, what the speed of those around them is, and then the direction that they decide to fly in, influences those neighbours around them as those neighbours observe which direction the other birds are flying in. And of course there's small errors, because we don't always quite get the centre of mass just right. There's a slight miscalculation. The instantaneous of speeds of those around us immediately is never known. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you can never know absolute speed and momentum at the same time, that kind of thing. So errors creep in. And so the observer's observations actually include their own observation. So when we're giving feedback, it's not just about that we're first kind of relinquishing control to the other person's narrative, what they want to see, and we're just writing the next paragraph or the next word or the next sentence for them, depending on how big those gaps are. We don't want to just repeat what they said, but we also don't want to leap so far as to be falling foul of one of the 12 roadblocks. So there's little errors that are fed back, and it moves the other person in a particular direction. But of course, our perception isn't the same as theirs. Errors built into the system, and it's not just about them then, it's about how we're interpreting, how we are finding meaning, and how accurately we are relaying that meaning to the first person. Then is the emergent system. So now we can see a whole system. The first person, the speaker, the second position, the listener, and then there's a third position, the system itself, which incorporates not just listener and speaker, but listener separately, speaker separately, listener and speaker separately, and then all of those together. So in a way, we're trying to influence the flocking phenomena. We're trying to direct an emergent phenomena. And so this brings us to what we mentioned in the last audio, ethics. We need to be aware of how we're influencing that system. At what point does it become unethical? We mentioned that sympathizing means that we actually start to enable the other person to do whatever it is they want, whereas perhaps a more ethical position would just be to help them write the story they want to write and help them think about things more, not necessarily direct them to any conclusion, but just ask themselves, or be the brain that asks the questions that their brain can't because it's fused or overloaded with some emotional payload, or they're focusing on one thing when there's many other things it could be that they've just not thought to ask because they've already kind of reached a conclusion about it. So we're again moving that flock a little bit as to what direction, wherever it wants to go. Now, thinking about it a bit more, but not too heavily, and just getting a little bit abstract, we might say, where's the objective truth in this process? Kind of becomes redundant. At the same time, you can say, okay, so it's subjective truth then, which normally confines an individual's mind and their subjective experience, but we've got two people in here at least. So that kind of becomes redundant as well. And then the world isn't really out there anymore. Not in the same way it used to be. It's not individualistic, it's not collective, it's emergent. All one system that's reflecting itself. Adam Smith talked about the hidden hand, that there seems to be something guiding it because of all these millions of decisions that people make all day about what they believe in the market. Some up, some down, some buy, some sell, and it creates an ebbing and flowing, a flocking. And so what is the truth? What is the subjective? These are just kind of concepts to help talk about things. Where is it headed? We don't know, but at least it's moving, right? I wish I knew more about linguistics. Fascinating subject. And my English is shit. Boy. At least I usually get the right there, and there. God, I hate when they spell it. You're wrong. Especially the flat earthers. Fucking hell. Can't even spell rightly when I talk about science denial. I've got a real bee in my bonnet about flat earthers. Anyway, kind of coming back to the metaphor of this system thing. First person, second person, 1 and 2 together, and then third person, and then 4, the whole system. It's a relational construct. So, you know that old saying that it's almost so well worn it's ridiculous. If a tree falls in the forest. So if a person's having a conversation and there's no one to hear him, is he really having a conversation? And then if the second person is there and present and hears them and feeds back, what's really going on here? And especially in language, because it's kind of an expression of meaning. It's an adjustment of perception, or it's a confirmation of perception to enable a decision of some kind, I presume, or remain where I am. Even that is a decision. So there's this, I don't have the language or construct to express it, but it's like it's between the parts. So we've got an interaction. We've got, in some sense, an object that is being acted upon, and we also have that in reverse, the listener giving feedback, acting on the speaker speaking, and the listener listening, and thereby being acted upon. So what is the function? Not just the function between the two, but also the function between each mind that's speaking and each mind that's listening. Because we have cognitive filters, we have perceptual filters, and these are mental functions as far as I can tell. So there's functions everywhere, and what are they all doing all of the time? And I've said in other audios as well that I kind of been trying on for the last about a year now, that whenever anybody says, what's the meaning? I interpret that to mean, what's a way of thinking about this? So Viktor Frankl, I read his book a while ago. I don't find it a particularly insightful book, except to say that the search for meaning is the search for thinking. Because there is no meaning per se. The meaning is a thinking between the parties. So if there's only one person speaking, there is no meaning. In the sense that we could argue, well, there's a difference between something in their mind that's given rise to a thought or a question. So there is a difference again. If you were totally congruent with everything, you would not ask any questions. There would be no difference. There would be no right, no wrong. So there would be no meaning. So, again, nihilism, it's not so straightforward as people make out. It's not about nothingness. It's, in some sense, also about wholeness, oneness, in the sense that you can go either way. You can be totally deconstructionalist about it and break it all the way down to nothing, or you can go the other way and build it all up to everything. Each seems to have an all-encompassing or an all-reduction of homogeneity that is everywhere at the same time, at the same place, is the same. So I suppose it's a philosophical question there, singularity. Is it infinite gravity, or is it a point so small as to be smaller or as small as nothing? It doesn't even make sense, does it? So there's all these presuppositions that we have that are almost biases, prejudices towards linguistic response. So if I say, what is the use of an axe? Well, to chop wood is the obvious answer. But the way the question is framed is a bit of a trick, because I said, what is the use of an axe? Of course, there's many uses that one could think of for using an implement. And again, the implement is defined almost by its use. Its use doesn't presuppose its function. I'm sure some very talented people out there could use it as a musical instrument. Some could use it as a doorstop, or a wedge, or a lever. So it seems the function of things is a relation between things. Internal thoughts, contrasting thoughts, contradictory thoughts, incongruent thoughts, chemical imbalances, even. We could start there and say, the physical stress we feel is a result of chemical imbalance. Then that manifests as stress. We don't feel good, we don't think right, and because we're not thinking right, our perception gets distorted and we don't make good decisions at linguistic level. And then when we introduce second parties to talk to them about it, we're grumpy, we don't speak in the right tone, we misunderstand, we don't put the effort in, and that has a knock-on effect all the way up from simple feedbacks of, say, chemical gradients, all the way up to complex linguistics, and then social interactions, and then, God forbid, cultural interactions, and then we're all the way into international relations and drawing up treaties. So just to kind of grind out this mental masturbation then, and see where we are. Now that we've explored the notion of function as defined as a context between things, what is the meaning of the universe? Well, surely now we can appreciate that that's a malformed question, because the universe contains everything within it, I presume. It's all of it, everything. So what is it in relation with if it contains everything? If it contains everything and everything, there can't be any other thing that's external that would make a context that would give rise to meaning. So it's fair to say that there is no meaning of the universe. Therefore, I've got to conclude that meaning is constructed. It's not innate, and that kind of supports my notion that meaning is a synonym for thinking, a new way of thinking, a different way of thinking, seeing it with a new perspective, making different decisions about the thing. So it's also never static, because things always change. Even my perception can change. Like, what is the use of an axe? Depends how I look at it. Depends how I interact with it. Brings us back to listener and speaker again. What's the meaning between the parties? Depends on the interaction. And it kind of brings us back a little bit to what we were talking about a couple of audios ago, evolution by natural selection. That some pathways will be obsolesced, others will be extinct, dead ends, red herrings, cul-de-sacs. Actually, no, that's not what I meant. Let me backtrack. Let me try a different set of linguistic patterns, see if that leads me to the meaning that I find comfortable and that resolves my inner conflict. And maybe it's a values adjustment, maybe it's on the one hand this, on the other hand that, and somehow I need to resolve these, and it's causing me frustration and anger, and I can't think clearly. I can't even represent these two opposing things. I don't even know what they are yet. I need to explore them. I need external help. I need external perspective, because mine's locked. And here we go again with that feedback, because are we getting feedback from one individual, many individuals, some ahead of us, some behind us, some moving faster, some slower, some further away? Where's the massive opinion? What are the outlier opinions? Where should I go? Where do I fit in? What's my utility? I'm a social creature. I can't go too far from the tribe. Networking effects. I need a few friends. I don't need a lot of friends. Where do you fit in all this? Always in flux, because fitting in, again, is one of those static expressions, but it's never static. It's always moving, always changing. So, that said, the next part about talking to people, listening, communicating, is giving small affirmations. I'm somewhat reticent to do this because, again, what's good? Is it subjective or objective, or is it just at that moment between the parties? Is it transient? Is it transcendental? Is it emergent? How can we know? Over what time horizon are we making that judgment? So it's all fuzzy to me because you can't have a good without a bad. Can you? I don't know. Again, who am I to judge and say what is good in others? Surely that's for them to decide. So I hate to impose that. So sometimes I'm quite cold in conversations because I see traits that I like. I see traits that I'm attracted to. And I recognise that, but it doesn't mean either that they're trying to do that consciously. It may not. People can't help how they look. So even giving compliments about how people look has nothing to do with them. They didn't choose their bone structure. They didn't organise the way that their face is. So even giving people compliments about their physical appearance to me is absurd. Yet it's the one that seems to have the greatest effect on people. I don't get it. For me, man going up to a woman, hey, I noticed you're across the room because you're very attractive. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was born like this. True. And here's the appalling bit. The woman, to be polite because she's been trained to, and I'm going to be a bit brutal about that because that's what it is. It's an indoctrination, or at least a social pressure. Will say, oh, thank you. Or hope so kind of for you to say so, and you're not bad looking yourself. And here's the problem with that, is it's just an icebreaker. I recognise that. And it's just a surface level comment to return a politeness. It's not even to return a compliment, but to return a politeness. The guy will then almost assume certain things. His opinion, his judgment has now been validated. It encourages him to make further judgments. If the woman says, in response to a guy saying, hey, I noticed you across the room, you're good looking, if she was to say, well, that's your opinion and I'm not here to validate your judgment, whilst accurate, true, to the point, and probably actually of greater use to society, what's the geezer going to respond? Oh, you're a stuck-up lesbian hoe. So she can't win, really, can she? And this is the point. She can't win. There's no real way to deal with these expressions of an imposement of judgment. It assumes that the man has a veto on what the judgment of attractiveness is. See what I'm saying? It probably comes across as a bit weird, but if you think about it, it's the fine line between saying, hey, I saw you across the room, I noticed you because, you stuck out in my eye, I was attracted to you. That's probably okay, but saying you are beautiful, as though I'm the final arbiter on what that is, and then projecting it on you and then to expect my judgment to be validated. We're not here to validate each other's judgments. So this is why I'm a bit funny about saying what's good, but nevertheless, I think if we can kind of constrain it to saying, in the context of this conversation, I appreciate, or I recognise, or I respect, or tell me more, I'm interested, I'm wanting to know, it's an encouragement to carry on. It's also an attitude that I mentioned in the previous audio where someone's expressing an appreciation of their relationship with their mentor, and we might say that's because the mentor saw something in you that sparked them to maintain that relationship and to give you all this information and help, as opposed to, you're mentally slow and therefore need all the help you can get. Yeah. One of those is empathy, the other one is sympathy, and perhaps this is the difference, maybe. Nonviolent communication, the model by Marshall Rosenberg, has quite a lot to say on this in terms of expressing gratitude. We normally do it in appalling ways, like we might say of our mentor, wow, you're great, you're so smart, you're so intellectually sound, and you have so much experience. Okay, they already know that. That's why they are a mentor. Doesn't help them, doesn't change anything, doesn't change perception, doesn't change decisions. Again, it's an appeal for your judgment to be validated by someone who is in an intellectually or experienced superior position, thereby validating your own efforts at judging similarly. That is to say, because I spot that you're a superior intelligence and I've done it so quickly, please praise me for having the intelligence to see that you're intelligent. It's a bit of a circle jerk. Again, validation. Instead, nonviolent communication talks about explaining, taking the time to show appreciation and gratitude properly. That is to say, state what the person did for you or in concert or in motion with you, how that changed things and what happened as a result and how that has made your life more wonderful. That is a more meaningful way to express gratitude rather than just saying, oh, thanks, you're a good friend, or you're a good mentor. Doesn't say a lot more, does it? Doesn't say anything at all, in fact. It's just providing platitudes. Also, it just seems another way that human psychology works is that if we nitpick on people and find fault and express fault, people clam up, they don't like it. So they're not going to say more at the risk of being criticised further. But if we give a little bit of platitude or tell them how much we're engaged in the conversation because we're learning as well and it's enriching our lives and making life more wonderful for us as being part of this experience, it doesn't make any judgment about that being good or bad, but merely stating that at least our lives has been enriched by being part of this, and that's an appreciation. It's inferred, carry on, you're doing good, but without putting a judgment on it. So it's, in respect of it being an affirmation, then it's recognising others' qualities, their efforts, their actions, and their ability. It's an acknowledgement of those attributes, not an evaluation of them. So, refrain from saying you are good at, or because they might think they're excellent at them, and then when you say good, that's a bit of an insult and they might take affront to it. So stay away from evaluations and judgments, but merely acknowledge things like, their thoughtful considerations, their aptitudes, the things that they keep doing, the patterns in their life that they keep doing, obviously is important to them. Again, I get divided on this because it's so much to remember, and I've realised I don't care enough to remember. Some people write these down, and they write down in a diary the person and the date and like the affirmation or compliment or note that they wrote about somebody, so that when that person comes up a week later, they just quickly flick through it and remember what they said. Is that being genuine, or is that being artificial? What's the difference? Once upon a time, I had it as a life goal to be able to send out a birthday card every day for a year. I wanted to know enough people so that I knew them well enough to be able to send 365 birthday cards in 1 year. I don't even know that many people anymore. And then, later on, emails came along and you could automate emails. So now you could just put it in a program and have the card sent on the day, and you don't even have to be there. Yet the result of the other party is the same. They get a card by email. Is it the thought that counts? I can't say that it... Well, there was the thought originally, but now that it's automated and it's been running for 10 years, is the thought diluted? Or was the original thought so concentrated that they were thinking 10 years ahead to plan this? I don't know. Anyway. Next.